Hello, my name is Lesley Atherton, and this piece of writing is called Extreme Weather. Naoma's hair had been covered in wood dust for many months, and she was more relieved than she'd realised that her husband's latest project was nearing its end. Certainly nobody could accuse him of being anything other than an assiduous worker and dedicated craftsman, and now his craft had become somewhat of a family trade, he having passed things on to his children, both male and female. In the past, his creations had been more modest. He'd begun with boxes and crates, shelves, chairs and tables, and had ended up, through some odd form of commissioning process, with the production of this monstrosity. Naoma wasn't keen. She'd shared his interest in the new kitchen table big enough for their entire extended family to dine, and in the storage crates and chairs and extra-large bed, but this, no. Still, though, the sun shone, the olives ripened, and the oranges fleshed out on their branches, surrounded with the sheltering calm of their glossy leaves, and she could forget about her confusion just a little. Naoma sat and watched, while chopping onions, garlic and tomatoes to flavour the bulgur wheat. Her cooking pot held a spiced lamb stew, which she stirred sometimes. Her husband laid down his tools, wiped his hands against his work clothes, and turned to look at his wife for the first time in what seemed to her like days. He walked towards her with a joyful heart, and enthusiasm made him begin to speak before he even arrived next to her. "Dear wife," he said, "we are almost complete." Naoma looked up. "How many more days?" she asked. "Perhaps tomorrow or the day after," he said. Naoma nodded and went back to the tomatoes. She wasn't sure of his reasons for the latest project, but accepted it was who he was and how he did things. "Beautiful, isn't it?" he asked, and she looked and had to admit that it was. "Majestic," she said, mumbling under her breath. "Pointless, but majestic." Her husband was a lovely man and idealistic. The only real trouble was his gullibility and his desire to believe everything that was told him. Only 2 months ago he'd been given this contract. The whole family had worked on it, neglecting all other paid work, and worst of all, Naoma was completely convinced that he would receive no payment for all the work on completion. The commission had arrived through fairly nebulous means that he'd been reluctant to talk about, but he'd had weird commissions before and they'd worked out okay. "I think it's time," he said, "to explain. Gather the family together, wife," he said. Naoma dropped the rest of the tomatoes in the wheat pot, and within a short while 22 people were standing around the latest creation, awaiting the creator's pronouncement. Noah, for it was he, looked up to the heavens. "I received a message from God above," he said. "Great floods are to come which will wipe out humanity's realm over the plants and animals. I have been instructed to build this great vessel to preserve our family and the animals by ensuring a mating pair is taken along with us." "Brilliant," said Japheth. "I was wondering what was going on with all those creatures in the barn." But Naoma wasn't quite so convinced. "Take with us? But how? The ark is a vessel for sea, and we are miles away from any water. No beasts or being could drag this enormous craft, especially not when loaded with all the animals." This wasn't her main concern. Primarily she was worried because there was no way God or voices from above would pay and allow her to clear the bills with the timber merchant. "You will understand," said Noah, "when the rains begin." "Rain is just what we need," said Naoma. "The grapes are beginning to shrivel on the vines." "Not this type of rain. Great flood. That's what I said, and I meant it. This will be a downpour the likes of which no people here have ever seen. It will wipe out many, including us, if we don't hurry. We have 2 days to load up the animals." 2 days. Naoma looked up to the heavens, and the first drop spattered onto her forehead. "Noah, it's starting," she said, showing him the droplets on her fingers. "Oh no, 2 days early," Noah cried. "I must have done my calculations wrong. Quick, children, gather everything you can. We have to make do with the craft the way it is." So the frantic march into the ark began, through growing piles of mud and increasing mounds of animal dung. Still, at least the animals got safely into the hold. The only problem was what Noah had missed off his creation. Biblical law got Noah's family tale a little wrong. He, his wife and his family all died of pneumonia on their journey, owing to non-stop rain and the non-existent roof on the humans' living quarters.